This is Gemara Baba Basra. Daf Nun Hey. I'm holding at the top of Nun Hey Amir Aleph. And we segued from the Nichsei Hager to the Nichsei of Akum. Very similar halachas we started seeing in the previous daf. And we concluded that we're going to go with Shmuel, but not completely with Shmuel. That we're going to go with Shmuel that he says, we're not going to go with Shmuel, which he says all you get is going to be the area of that you dig, but rather digging a little bit will be allowing you to be kind of the entire field. But we'll go with the din of Shmuel, the Nichsei Akum, Harehein Kimidbar, they're like a desert, Chlamazik, and everyone who is Zeicha them, Zacha Bahem. So Sholach Ravuna Baravin. 5 lines down, Nun-Hey Amid Aleph, says Ravuna Baravin, Yisrael shalakach sada me'akom, Oba Yisrael achzer v'hichzik bam. So we have a Yid, a Yisrael, that bought a field from a guy, and then another Yid came and performed a kinyan in the field before the buyer got the shtar. Again, let's remind ourselves. We learned yesterday a fascinating yesod, that when I buy a field from a guy, me paying him cash removes him from the field. However, I am not koineh until I get the deed, the shtar. And we saw yesterday that if another yid comes and he makes a kinyan in the field, he digs, then kimidbar, he makes yizaych in the field. So that such case happens. Says the Gemara, 2 lines on the white lines, and Hayam and Alv, Ein Maitzian Aisam Yadai. We do not remove it from him, the second guy, just like Shmuel. Chen Haya, Rav Avin, Rav Ila, V'chol Rabbi Seinu, Shavim Bedavar. They all agree that the second guy has a kinyan if he makes a proper chazaka, does an act of kinyan in the field. Says the Gemara, and now we go back into the famed Dina de Malchusa Dina. Amar Rabba on the first white line. Hani tzazmi li yishali ukvam bar Nechemya. Reish Galus and Mishmei de Shmuel. 3 things they heard from Ukva bar Nechemya, the Reish Galus, in the name of Shmuel. Number 1, Dina de Malchusa Dina, which is why this is coming into our sugya. Number 2, Varisasa de Parsai ad Memshnin. The chazaka of the Persians is not effective until they have 40 years of a chazaka. Number 3, Vani Zaharure de Zavin Ara Litaska, Zavininu Zavini. And number 3 is when a Yairish was kaina land, how? By paying the taxes, it is a good kinyan. Says the Gemara, this third case about being kaina field via paying off the taxes. Vahani Mili, says the Gemara, Litaska. This is only to the taska, which is the tax on the property. That if the property tax was not paid off, then by doing that, you make a kinyan. Avole karga. But if you paid a head tax, like, that's not enough to make a kinyan. My taima. Karga, a karkef the gavra monach. Because the head tax goes per person. And therefore, by paying the head tax, it's not going to give you a kinyan in his field. You have to pay your taxes, but you don't lose your field by not paying your karga. So if you pay up someone else's karga, you do not get his field. Whereas Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua Amar, he argues on the 4th wide line. Afilu shari dekada, even barley in a jug, mishtabdi le karga. Says Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua, no. Karga, the head tax that each and every person has to pay to the melech, indeed, creates a shibud on everything. For sure is karka, but even his own utensils, even his own items, the barley in his house is subject to that tax. Amar Rav Ashi, Amar li Huna bar Nasin kashi b'neimar. Huna Bar Noson said that a Meimar had a kasha. Imkain, if what you're saying is true, but Talti Yerush has been Ayabachar. There's no such halach anymore of the Rusha of the Benaya Bachar. Why? Tavli Roi. Because according to Rav Huna, the estate of the father is all considered Roi. Now, why is it all called Roi? The reason is because we just said that when one has the tax that he has to pay, what is mishubit to that tax? Everything. His properties, his metaltalin, everything. And therefore, what happens if someone dies and he didn't yet pay his tax yet? So all his properties are subjugated to the king right now, which therefore means that all his properties don't go directly to his children. They're waiting because they have to first be used to pay off his tax. And the halacha is the Bachar does not take double biroi. So it owed the father money, it's roi, it's going to come to the father. The Bachar doesn't take pishnayim double in that. Only in kibbutz mochsek, only what the father already has. This is not going to be considered something that the father has. Says the Gemara, Amar Lei. If that is true, afilu taskanami. So responds Rav Ashi, 1 second. If you're right, then whenever there's a lien from the melech, that removes the item from being considered muhsik, and then the Bechar does not get it, then afilu taskanami. The property taxes should be the same thing. And then what? Then the Bechar will not get Bishnayim and all the properties of his father. How could that be? So what are you clearly going to have to answer me? The of Tasco is that in the case of the Bechar, it has to be, you're right, that he paid the tax and then he died. Therefore, it's no kasha. Indeed, we could say that all properties are, yes, mishubad, to paying off one's both karga, head tax, and taska, the property taxes. Says the Gemara, Amar Avashi, Amar Lihuna Bar Nasa Shaltinu L'Sifrei, to Rava. They asked the Seifrim of Rava, Amri Li, so what's the halacha? Ki Ravuna Brei Rav Yeshua. The halacha is like Rav Huna Brei Rav Yeshua, that everything is meshubad to paying the king. Velohi Hasam, says the Gemara over there, Lakume Milsa Hudamar. The reason they said this over there is just to show that which they did was correct. That in reality we don't ask like Rav Huna Brei Rav Yeshua, and rather his properties are not subjugated. But rather, says the Gemara, rather, this is the way that they had to do it due to their governmental problems, but that's not necessarily our halacha. V'amar Ravashi, 4 lines on the bottom, paradachas misayeya masa. A loafer has to help the people in the city with the taxes. What's a loafer? What's a pardachta? This is someone who does nothing. He loafs around. Such a person still has to pay taxes. Bahani immediately says the Gemara, this is only that silta masa, where the city includes him as part of the city. Avalandiska siyata dishmayahi. But state officials exempted him, then okay. If they gave him up tour, then it's siyata dishmaya. Then he does not have to reimburse the taxpayers. The boundary and the chatzav plants split up the property of the nechsei ager. Meaning, regarding someone else making a kinyan in the nechsei ager, going back to that, so yeah, if there's boundaries, if there's these chatzav plants, then it splits it up. And therefore, if I make a kinyan in that part, I don't have a kinyan in that. That's only klabed halachas of nechsei ager. However, klabed halachas of peyo or tuma, it's all considered one large field. It's broken up, it's considered into 2 different fields. As the Gemara Pei Yamahi, What's the halacha of peah that we care about the boundaries? It's not. Ve'elu mafsikin lepeah, the following. Divide a field for peah. Hanachal, a river, vashlulis, a water-filled ditch, v'derech, harabim, as we turn over to the Nehemiah base, a public path, or v'derech hayachid, or a private path. Ushvil rabim, a public road, a public path, a private road. Shvil rabim, shul yachid, a path of the public, a path of a yachid. Be hakavua, that is constantly used always throughout the year. So now that's what it means, that those areas split up the field with regarding to Peah. Now we're learning that the boundaries or the chatz of plant would do the same. Toma mahi ditanan. 4 lines down on Hamid Beis. Hanichnas labika. Someone enters into a valley. B'moisek shamim. Ve'toma b'sadeh blainis, and there's toma in a field. Amar alachti l'makam halos. And he said, I went to the place. I went to the area that included a place with toma. But ve'eni idea. I don't know if I went to that particular place in Laf. So you have a machlekes whether he's tahor or not. Why? Rav Lazar held that if we're not sure, if you entered into a field that had tuma on it, the is your tahor. Safek maga. If you for sure entered into the field, the question is, did you touch? Did you contract the tuma? Safek maga tuma, then tame. So according to Rav Lazar, the reason we have to know where the boundaries of the field are and whether it splits up the field is to be considered whether you were bia, whether you went into that field or not. Safek maga tuma tame. Aval Shabbos. But says the Gemara, we just had 3 different areas of halacha. We had peah, we had tuma, and we had er halacha being kind of an ger. But says the Gemara, 5 lines on the bottom. Avol Shabbos, regarding to Shabbos, loy is not considered a separate field. Rav Amar Afilini and Shabbos, Titania. Hoitzi Chatzi Grogris, so just around someone carries out a half a Grogris. To just around and he places it. If it was within one act of forgettingness, chayiv, then he's obligated to Chatzi Grogris, which is the shear, to be obligated for carrying on Shabbos. You did 2 halves, but 1 helim, 1 act of forgetfulness, then you're chayiv. Bishnei helamais, if it was 2 acts of forgettingness, then but. Rav Yosi Aimer, behelayim echad, if it was 1 act of forgettingness, as we turn over to Nun Vav, Amid Al, if it was 1 act of forgettingness, Bershos Achas, Chayiv. So Rav Yosi comes along and Rav Yosi differentiates whether it was within 1 Rishos or not. Whereas B'shtei Rishuyos, it's going to be Potter. Ve'amar Rabba. And comes along Rabba and he says, V'ushesh chiyav chatos beinehem. And it must be where there's a chiyav chatos between them. Aval karmelis loy. And Abaye Amar Avilu karmelis. Aval pisla loy. Says Abaye, a block of window. And Rav Amar Afilu Pisla. And it concludes the Gemara of us, the Rava L'Taimei. Now Rava, who says his din over here is L'Taimei Damar Rava Shabbos, is Krishos Kitin Dami. And therefore, Rava, who's saying that the boundary, that this Chatzah plant, that even this block of wood, yes, creates a division Klape Shabbos. Not only Klapi Nichse Ger or Toma or Peah, but even Shabbos says Rava. Because Rava's L'Taimei, the Rava holds it's the same halachas with regard to Gin and Shabbos. We'll pick it up from here, B'siyata Dishmaya.